Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Folks, we are on for another show of SimplyTrade podcast, but we've got a special version of our show here. It's called the SimplyTrade Folks, and we've got to get to into the background of somebody that we have a lot of respect for. But Lalo, this is going to be a good show, I think. This lady was was our very first show that we published, I believe. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it was. Trudy, she was our very first show. And when we have the fan shows, it's really cool because when the fans come on and they or our listeners, when they come on our show and talk to us, they always, without a fault, reference that episode. They're like, that was a cool episode, and Trudy, and so and then also Trudy's our instructor here at Global Training Center, and same thing, we get a lot of comments is like, is Trudy teaching, or where's Trudy? They miss Trudy, especially during the pandemic when yeah, exactly. Well, remember during the pandemic we were not in person, so people were like, I haven't seen Trudy in a long time. When are we doing more in persons? So that was kind of cool. So
yeah, you have your own fan base there, Trudy.
I do. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, there you go. We're going to be interviewing Trudy Wilson, and she's very well respected in the industry, but she is quite a character. So it's like one of those that it is always a pleasure to get to talk to you. And the one thing is that has intrigued me that, she has a goat farm in Jamaica.
Let's just start with a bang.
Let's start with a bang.
Let's just go there now.
Okay.
What the heck?
We're going to jump right into and it's been some funny stories that have come out of that, but in comments and whatnot. But you know what? That's one of those is like, okay, that's not something you're going to hear every day. So how in the world, when you're in international trade and training and all that, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'll have to postpone that. I got to go take care of a goat.
Very, very good question. A lot of times I wonder, when and where did I hit my head? Because how did I end up here?
you hear people going, yeah, I need a work-life balance. And it's like, well, okay, that is definitely takes you away from your traditional work. And it's a lot of work to take care of livestock and whatnot, as I well know. Anyway, Trudy, welcome to our show, and this is going to be a good one. But seriously, it's like, so do you spend all your time in Jamaica, or just part time, or what?
Part-time. I go back and forth as needed. Okay. So like if I need to be on site for Global Training Center or to see a customer, or to attend a wedding or to attend my godson's birthday parties. Yes, I'm in the US, but other than that, I'm in Jamaica. So I do go back and forth quite a bit. So I try to balance that. So I'm in both places.
Intriguing. Yes. Lalo, how do you want to? Where do we want to go first here?
Well, we can start. I always like to start with like the early beginnings, I guess. Trudy, it's funny and it's fun to understand like where all of us started and how we got to where we. I've had the pleasure of going to Jamaica and visiting Trudy's village. Is that what they're called, Trudy? I don't know. City?
It's a town.
I don't know. Well, tell me. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. So your little town in Jamaica where you grew up, and it's a nice little quaint little town. It's fun, like the little churches and the schools and the roads and so I got to visit. but it was fun visiting and seeing, and I kept on thinking to myself, how did Trudy ever end up in the United States, coming from this small little town? And you see all the little girls. I can just imagine Trudy there too. I think they were getting out of school or something, right,
Yes.
Trudy, when we saw
In
them
our
walking with
uniforms.
their uniforms, right? Their uniforms and their bags and walking. It's very traditional, right? I guess in that sense that they still wear uniforms and
it goes back to a colonial establishment with
the British system. Yes.
Yeah. So that is maintained. And if I'm not mistaken, you traditionally drive on the left side of the road instead of the right.
Yes, we definitely drive on the left.
You have a lot of vehicles that are right-hand drives and all that, right?
Yes, we do. So we follow a lot of the British system. Most of our English is British English. So I always have to make sure I keep spelling my words differently. That can be a challenge sometimes.
It's just a handful of program. It's just a handful of words that are a little bit different. And then the pronunciation is always a good one for me is the aluminum versus aluminium.
Yes, or schedule and schedule.
Yes.
So
what is your schedule? Is it by what? Have you been drinking? Oh, no. Oh, okay. That's how you say it. Okay.
The other cool thing that I noticed is that a lot of the signage and information when you arrive in Jamaica, but even the signage on the roads and at stores, they're in Spanish and English, right, Trudy? Or didn't you point that out? I know it's English.
I think what you're thinking about, we have a lot of Hispanic influence. We have a lot of Spanish influence. So a lot of our names like Ocho Rios and Rio Cobre. We have a lot of Spanish influence as far as the names of places and streets and stuff like that. That's where
right. And I was like, what the heck? I guess
the Spaniards
the
came to Jamaica. The Spaniards came to Jamaica.
I was going to say where they part like.
Well, the Spaniards actually had, there were a lot of Spanish explorers, I guess, and as well. So,
Conquistadores. Yes, they did come to Jamaica. No, don't ask me when, but they did come to Jamaica. So we have a lot of Spanish influence in, even we have a dialect called Patois, and it's a combination of broken English and a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of French and, all these different things all thrown together. So,
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So you grew up in like Highgate, or that's where you are now?
Here. Yes, I grew up so I have returned back to where I grew up. So to give you a little bit of the story, I actually was born in the US. I know that kind of takes the story down a little bit, doesn't it? I'm sorry. But anyway, I was born in the US. I was born in the US and my parents went to college in Kentucky. Right. And after they got done with college, they moved back to Jamaica. And by then I was 2 years old. So I did all my schooling through high school in Jamaica. And so I graduated, but when we lived in Jamaica, every summer we would travel to the US for different things. So my father is a pastor and we do like a lot of, church events and, go speak here and go speak there. So I've been to a lot of church potlucks. Right? So we would do that every summer. One year we lived in Indiana for a year and my mother went to Ball State and did her master's at Ball State. I actually even went to Mexico for 3 weeks. We were there for 3 weeks studying as well and came back to Jamaica, finished up high school and actually moved back to the US to start college. So I actually graduated from high school twice because I was too young when I graduated from high school in Jamaica. I was 15 when I graduated from high school in Jamaica. I went to the US. They're like, oh, you're too young for college. So they made me do another year of high school. So I graduated from high school again. And then I went to college in Kentucky, Asbury College, which is now Asbury University. And while I was there, you're going to love this, Lalo. I had a double major in Spanish and French with almost a minor in German. I don't think you knew that.
Let's just add up all kinds of stuff with that one. A double major of Spanish and French.
And almost a minor in German. Actually, I think I had enough classes for a minor in German. It's just that my professor didn't have her doctorate, so they couldn't give me a minor. So So all those years I was studying languages in college, I thought I was going to go into, like linguistics or translation or anything like that. Well, God had different plans. And so going into my senior year into college, because my mother was actually a professor at the college where I went to. And going into my senior year, she said, "Hey, Trudy, you should put in your resume so that when you graduate from college, you'll have a job." And I said, "No, I want to have my summer. I want to have fun. Who's thinking about working?" Yeah. And very unlike my mother. I know. Okay. And my mother is typically the one that, she says, "I do, and you have to do what she does, what she says." But somehow she let that slide. Okay. So I graduated from college and then I didn't have a job. So I signed up with a temporary agency, and like any other good old temporary agencies, they sent me to several different locations. And I went to an insurance company. That wasn't my cup of tea. I went to another company that actually manufactured zippers in Lexington, Kentucky. Wasn't my cup of tea either. Ended up actually at the Lexington Bluegrass Airport working for a company called Harper Robinson, which I guess I should say was a customs brokerage firm back then and freight forwarder. So I started there as a temp doing data entry. And the guy that hired me, he's like, "Hey, I want you to take these numbers and put these numbers here in the system." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm a college grad. I can handle that. That's not hard." So I was doing that for a while. And he said, "Hey, do you like what you're doing?" I'm like, I really don't even know what I'm doing." He's like, he's like, "Okay, would you like me to train you?" I said, "Sure." So he trained me, and then he moved to run the office in Nashville, Tennessee, and he left me in Lexington, Kentucky. So while I was there doing my little thing within the first year, I studied for the customs brokerage exam and was blessed enough to pass on the first try. I said, "I'm going to do this once and get it over with and move on with my life." And so at that time, I was running that office, and the company switched from Harper Robinson to Circle International. So now you're seeing how far back I go with this. All right. So, so working for Circle International, getting all my customers. And actually, I always like to tell everybody that that office was a true definition of a one horse town. You have one customs broker to one customs official. Because that's all we were. So it's me and my customs officer, right? So we had a pretty good working relationship. He if he's going to go inspect something, he's like, "Hey, you're busy. You want to come see this?" I'm like, "Sure." So I trot around with him and look at and learn and see what they're looking for as a customs agent, and learn a couple of things from him on the other side of the fence, right? So that helped me to grow there as well. And then because I was the only customs broker in Lexington, everything that came into Lexington, I cleared. And at the time, there was Emery Worldwide there. Guys remember Emery Worldwide? Yes, Emery
That's going
Worldwide.
back a ways.
Oh, come on, Andy. You don't have to date me that far back.
Hey, listen, I'm right there with it. It is when I was up in Canada, we had FedEx, and Emery was right next door.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
All right, so I'm right in the middle
You're
of
right
it.
there.
So I'm probably older than you are, so I'm older than dirt. So there you go.
Slightly older. So I would clear all the freight that came in for Emery. So over the years, we developed an excellent working relationship that they said, "Hey, you should come over and open a brokerage office for us." And I kept saying, "No, I'm great. No, I'm good. I'm happy where I am." So they kept coming, sweetening the deal. They kept taking me to lunch, taking me to dinner. All right. We are in Kentucky. There's a Derby and there's, Keeneland in Kentucky, right? In Lexington. So they kept taking me to the horse races, and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, this is great. This is fun." And, they kept trying all these different things to get me over. And finally they said, "Hey, how would you like a brand new Ford Taurus every year?" I said, "Sign me up."
Lord have mercy.
Yes. So they hired me in a sales/brokerage position so that they could justify giving me the car is really what it boils down to. So yeah, I got a brand new Ford Taurus every year. I'm like, "What took you so long? You should have started with that." You wasted a lot of time. So I moved over and opened Emery Customs Brokers in Lexington, Kentucky, Emery Customs Brokers in Louisville, Kentucky, and Emery Customs Brokers in Evansville, Indiana. So I did business development and sales for all three areas. Working in Lexington was actually very good. I had a great team that I was working with. I was the only female. That was kind of fun, right? So I got
It's
everything
some
I
pretty
wanted.
country up in that way too, isn't it?
Yes. Going back and forth, you see all the horse farms, and yeah, it's beautiful country back there. So I was kind of going back and forth I was going back and forth between Louisville, Evansville, and Lexington, just to a little bit of sales and a lot of brokerage just to get those offices up and running. So that went for a while. And actually, while I was in Lexington, I actually extended myself over to the export side. So we had one guy that was doing exporting. And when he would go on vacation, guess who they asked to fill in? Me. Yeah. All right. So what I would do is I'd come in the morning, do my brokerage entries, right? Go back, take a nap, come back at night and process export paperwork. So that's when I said
split shifts.
Split shift, right? And I was like, okay, young man, very few vacations. Thank you very much, because I don't enjoy these split shifts. But it definitely opened my eyes and gave me more experience on both sides of the fence, both the importing and the exporting. So that was pretty cool right there. From there, I was promoted to the brokerage manager for Emery Customs Brokers in Atlanta, which is one of our gateway offices. So we had Atlanta, LA, Chicago, New York, Miami. There's one other. I think there were 6 gateway offices. And it's so funny because especially Atlanta and Chicago, we were always competing to see who would clear more entries for the month. So for Atlanta, we cleared all the Emery freight for the Southeast region. So like Northern Florida was a part of my territory, all the Carolinas, Tennessee, and, southern part of Kentucky. So we cleared quite a bit of freight. And that's where my experience expanded even more, because I'm now seeing more industries like Oshkosh and Gerber and, forklift companies and, all kinds of stuff was now coming more in the picture. In Lexington, I concentrated a lot more on equipment and machinery. But in Atlanta, I saw the full gamut of, like alligator belts and shoes and purses and all kinds of stuff would come into the office. And it was a great experience. I managed, I had 2 supervisors that worked for me, and we had, I think, 8 data entry clerks at the time. And we processed anywhere from 12 to 1,400 entries a month. So we were very busy, and we worked 7 days a week. So we cleared all the freight for the Emery system for the Southeast region. From there, I was promoted to what was called a regulatory compliance manager. So now what that meant was I had to travel to all the brokerage offices in my territory, which I had the East Coast. Yeah, mainly the East Coast, right? I had to travel all the offices, customs brokerage offices, to make sure as a customs broker, we're compliant with customs, right? So that took on a whole different set of challenges. And it was great because I get to see different areas, different locations, see how different offices worked. It was actually pretty cool. And then I was promoted again, and I was called a regulatory compliance manager. And this is like, Emery was very big on promoting people. Okay, now you're doing this. Now I want you to do this. That's one of the many things that I really, really liked working with Emery. Now, not only was I responsible for the compliance aspects of all the offices, I'm now responsible for the financial aspect. Because you can make money all day long. If you're not compliant with customs, you're paying that out in penalties and fees, right? Hence my office in Pittsburgh that decided to mess up in January. Folks, we could do this in July when it's warmer, because I got stuck in Pittsburgh for weeks trying to clear up their mess, okay, because they had so much volume and they couldn't keep up with it. So they're on the flip side, they're getting all these penalties. I'm like, And then the other side of the coin is you can be compliant with customs all day long. That's awesome, but we really need for you to make money to be a financially viable office. So my territory was from Portland, Maine, all the way to Miami, Florida. And I even had offices on the West Coast. So like LA reported to me. I think Salt Lake City. I can't even remember all the offices that reported to me. So I was pretty much on a plane quite often going somewhere to visit someone. Okay. And from there, I branched out into customs compliance and consulting. And now I am one of the proud instructors for Global Trading Center, as well as have my own consulting firm, which is TrueTrade Solutions. So there you have it in a nutshell. My little story.
It's really not the end of the story, because somebody started a ranch.
Oh, that story. Well, that was years down the road.
Well, okay. You hear the term, "This is not my first goat rodeo." I was like, well,
not my first rodeo.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And Trudy is literally the goat of trade compliance.
There you go.
Wow,
That is
thank
the bold.
you. Thank you. Those pretty big shoes to fill, but I appreciate it. Thank you. I have lots of help and lots of support. I can't do this all by myself, so I definitely appreciate that.
Well, and as you're going in, it's like as you're taking on obviously additional duties over your career and whatnot. Looking back now, I love this because Lalo's the one that first came up with this. Is that in your younger years, if you had the ability now to go back and talk to yourself at 21 years old or 25 years old or whatever, what would you say in as things are coming and obviously all of our experiences have made us who we are today. Get that. But what would be some of the things to say, you really need to be looking at, taking this kind of training or learn how to do this or life balance, as we would say, work-life balance, or what would you, what would be the nuggets of wisdom that you could impart on a rookie Trudy back in the day?
A rookie Trudy back in the day. Okay. That's a really interesting question. So nuggets of wisdom, definitely do not close off any opportunities, because if you told me when I graduated from college that I would be now a trade consultant, which obviously nobody knows about. Okay. What's the saying? Nobody says when I grow up, I want to be a licensed customs broker ever. Right. So a whole industry that nobody knows about. Right. So always keep your options open. You just never know where life is going to take you. Along with that, you always want to, networking is huge, as well as get as many certifications and trainings. And one of the things I said is Emory was really big on giving us opportunities. And that's one of the things I really embraced and I really loved, because that helped us to grow. All right. So that helped me to grow as an individual. So find that organization, or even for yourself, find that one thing that you love and just dig deep and just keep going and keep wanting to grow and keep wanting to learn. The sky's the limit. You can't, and even as old as we are, right, Andy? Because apparently you and I are older than Lalo. You never know everything, and you're always learning something, right? So it's always good to keep that spark there, to keep that energy there, and always be looking out for, okay, what's new? What's the latest and greatest? How can I improve? Continuous improvement and continuous learning. That's probably that's probably what I would say.
So what should the life in the day of, let's say, a compliance related type person, somebody that's in charge of a compliance department or a brokerage, area or whatever, what should their day generally consist of? That you have your important things, but usually the urgent supersedes the important, and unfortunately the important gets overlooked as time goes on. What would be the things that you would say, you know what, in the hustle and bustle of everything that goes on, there's always going to be a fire and all that. What should somebody do if they're going to become proficient at managing the operation and encouraging their people, empowering their people, and, being compliant, making, the company's got to make money. If the company makes money, you can make money. So what should the average day in the life or whatever of a person be as far as those important things that need to get done?
Okay. That's a pretty broad question. And rightfully so. And the reason why I say it's a broad question is because everybody's organization and everybody's setup is just a little bit different, right? You can go from a one person office, which most of us in trade compliance are like, I like to say Lone Ranger, to a whole department. So that's going to change just a little bit differently, like how that day in the life of that person is going to work a little bit differently. However, I think we all need to focus on, like you said, the important stuff and make sure that the important stuff stays important, bearing in mind that, yes, there are going to be fires. So we're going to have to figure out how to prioritize, right? What's coming in? Do I have to take care of this now? Or can this actually wait? Or can I delegate it or get like one of my service providers to help me with that particular issue? My big thing and Lala will tell you that I'm always telling everybody, is document everything, right? Because first of all, everybody's memory's bad. probably not as bad as mine, but to remember everything that's going on is one of the hardest things. But documenting that process not only helps you, but it helps somebody else that's coming in behind you to make sure that they're still following the same procedures, as well as, since we're talking about trade compliance, it ends up helping to be a mitigating factor in the event like all hell breaks loose and that government agency knocks on the door. You can say, look, yeah, all hell broke loose, but this is what we've been trying to do. And this is what we've been working on. And this is a path that we're taking. All right. So I would say really and truly document and prioritize, bearing in mind that, and that's why we love the industry, right? There's never a dull moment.
Well, I
Always
get that.
something
Okay,
exciting going on.
coming back, it's like, documenting, so that there's an audit trail basically, and there can be a transfer of knowledge. I get that. That's one thing. The other thing is this prioritizing of items. Isn't that just regular time management, or are we talking a little bit more detail? I'm kind of sending you a softball here.
You're sending me a softball. I'm trying to figure out where you're going with this question.
So somebody is like, well, I have good, here's the things I got to get done for the day. And you're talking about prioritizing. But if you're in charge of a department, there's more than just prioritize. The ability to delegate, which is something a lot of people struggle with. And as you're assessing things, that ability to prioritize, that takes time to become proficient in those types of skills, especially, if it's just yourself is one thing, but you're going to burn yourself out if you've got a staff, but you're doing all the work. And then the other scenario there is being able to say, what can I, delegate and empower my staff? I mean, there's a lot of things like that, but from your perspective, I guess, let me rephrase the question more of, should I just focus on learning how to prioritize, learning how to become proficient at time management and running my calendar and those kinds of things and putting things in there? Or how do you become proficient in prioritizing those tasks and looking at it? Probably a question you haven't really thought about in a while. You just do it.
I haven't thought about that. I just do it. But you hit a lot of key points, right? So delegation, if you have staff and a team, you have to delegate and empower them, right? So a part of that is they have to know what to do. They have to know where to find the information in order to give you back that right information. So definitely delegating and prioritizing. Is it so much time management? Everything is time management. You can spend, countless hours on one thing, or you can figure out, I have 30 minutes to get this done and work on it. So I still don't think I'm answering your question, Andy.
Well, you're fine, I guess. And here's something else, I guess, is let's take it on. You're running a brokerage operation, or you've got certain situations where we're talking about import as far as brokerage wise. Even on an export, if you're running an export operation or you're supporting a warehouse that is receiving freight or shipping it out, I mean, those key timelines of what is it you got to work with is like, okay, their cutoff is at 2:00, let's say, to get something out the door for exports because they still have to do the pick and pack and all that. Well, that doesn't mean that you can wait till 1:45, complete a task maybe, and then send it to them. It's like you've got to reverse engineer that. Well, if it took, it's got to take time for them to do this and go through the process. So I guess where I'm going is that as you were going up the chain and now all of a sudden you've got a department and you've got some people with you. And I'm sure as a rookie manager, you were like, part of you was like, yeah, I can take this on. And then you're in the role and you're going, without anybody looking around and going, aha moment, going, okay, what have I done?
What have I agreed to?
And it's like, is there an opening in the back door I can run out of here, right? How do you get through those kinds of things when you're overwhelmed and you're trying to learn on those kinds of things? Where I'm going is like, delegating is a key thing, and it's okay to also, you're not dumping on your staff. But on the same token, it's also okay to say, hey, I need some help from your peers or all that. Somebody says, oh, you can't show a weakness. Well, that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. So, to give you an example of like back in the days when I was working with a brokerage office in Atlanta. So yes, delegation is key because if we're processing 12 to 1400 entries a month, I personally can't do all of that. Right. So you have your supervisor that they are delegated that they have to divvy up the files to the respective entry analysts, right? And then their job, once the entry analyst gets the job done, they have to review those files. Now, as they're reviewing those files, they don't bring every issue to me as the manager, right? They're reviewing those files, the ones that are a higher level issue that they can't resolve. Then the supervisor and I will sit down and review those, right? My task or my job responsibility and function, because I've delegated all the other things, are higher level, more of a compliance aspect of working with a customer on maybe a classification issue or maybe trying to determine a country of origin issue. And even I did a lot of like sales. So I was a subject matter expert that would go out with the sales rep. So um, how time management ties in again, like everybody else, even though I'm at a managerial level, I still have certain things I have to get done. What I hated doing was reports. Those IDs and payroll stuff, those are stuff I'm like, oh gosh, I have to do this. But anyway, so you still had to get those done within the required time frame. Now, was there other people that I could, because there were other brokerage managers you could pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I have XYZ going on. How do you manage this process? And again, going back, you can't act like you can do everything and know everything. You have to rely on your team internally and then your team even externally as well. So
Doing some
I still don't
networking
think I
with your
answered your
peers
question.
and maybe even up to
Networking,
that.
yes.
That's something else that will help. Is like, okay, so learning to delegate, learning to prioritize, learning to ask for help, and and networking with
Mhm.
others, and all of that. So as you
And
go
even
through it,
talking to your managers and say, hey, help me. I don't know how to do this. Walk me through this process so that the next time I know how to do it. So,
but
yeah.
then there's one other thing. Aside from your
Okay.
operational, you still have to be up to speed on what's going on and the regulatory changes and all that. How do you handle that
Yes, you
kind of
do.
stuff?
Okay, that's the $1 million question, and that's one of the things that I talk about all the time in my sessions with everybody. First and foremost, let's just be honest: things are constantly changing, and it does get really challenging to keep up with everything. So again, networking comes into play. Signing up for email blasts that different SimplyTrade newsletters that come out. The great thing is that there's so many organizations that are sending out, flyers and newsletters and, hey, remember this, and hey, this is coming down the pike. The more of that stuff you sign up for, that's how you keep on top of the information. Custom sends out a myriad of information constantly. And keeping your ears to the ground, listen to the news, something as simple as that. Whatever's going on in the world is going to affect international trade. And how is that going to affect you? And how are you going to work through that? And really just networking and keeping up with, again, I think I pretty much listed everything that's the main way. And then just reading the regulations because they change and things get updated. So what's new now? Not the most fun thing to read, but we still have to go in and read and
And
see what's going on.
Trudy, and I'm gonna like switch a little bit on the subjects because obviously personally I work with you a lot, here at the Global Training Center, and we're very close and we collaborate a lot. But I've gotten to like really get to know your style and everything, and I really see that a lot of our clients like really enjoy and embrace the way you teach. Do you think that came from, well, actually, obviously from your experience, but do you think like your mom's influence was involved in there too? She was a teacher, and you said she was very stern with you. Like you got to do. I don't know. I can imagine her like my mom or my grandma, right? Traditional, like you got to do this. Like things in order. You know what I'm saying? I guess like just old school, and so like you kind of like adapt to that and you become that and you bring it up in your life, and next thing you realize you are your parents, right? And I don't know, did that help a lot, like with your mother, or I mean, it's funny that she was a professor at a university and you're teaching also.
Yes. So actually, both my parents are teachers and have been
That's right. You
teachers their
did
whole
say
life.
that.
Yes, yes. As well as my dad is a pastor. So speaking in front of a crowd has been my whole entire life. And, doing speech and drama and all that kind of stuff has definitely been through my whole childhood and growing up. So yes, I inherited that. I came by it honestly, and they're good instructors and good communicators. And I think a little bit of it, kind of sprinkled on me. So I try to do the best I can. But yes, I would have to say, and actually even my aunts and uncles are also teachers. So it runs in the family. Always done one.
Did you have anybody in the business world there that I guess took you under your wing or their wing and kind of helped you along, or did you seek somebody out?
I have had many people that have sought me out and have been very helpful. The very, very, very first person, can we name names? We can name names, right? Okay. The very, very, very first person is Chuck Lones. I have no idea where he is anymore. But when he's the one that hired me as a temp doing data entry and introduced me to this whole big world. And just the way he introduced it to me and explained it to me, and he just made me fell in love with it at the get-go. So I had to be my very, very, very first person. The second person was actually a customer. So this customer, he said, Trudy, I'm going to make you the best freight forwarder ever. And I'm young and wet behind the ears. I'm like, what does that mean? What's he talking about? And what he did was he was always on me. He's like, where's this? Where's this? Where's my container? What's going on with the shipment? To the point where before he would call me, then I started calling him going, okay, Chris, here's your container. Okay, Chris, this is what's going on. He's like, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. So I got it from both ends of the spectrum inside with the hordes of people I work with, as well as customers. But I've had many people along the way. Lots, like I said, Emory was a phenomenal group to work with. And just about everybody that I've worked with at Emory have always been very encouraging and, showing you, okay, can do this and let's do this. And now we want you to do this. Another big name is Jane Lindley. She got married. I don't know what her married name is, but she was also amazing. John Reed in Lexington, Kentucky, he was also amazing. So I've had a lot of great people that I have been fortunate to have in my life that have helped to mold me and move me along my path.
And now, as you've gone through with some of that, were you ever in a situation where it was hard to take some feedback and you had to come back and go, wait a minute, what they're telling me, I think on it for a while and I come back to it and it's like, okay, you know what, you're right? Or were you just pretty much, give me the feedback, I'm fine or whatever?
No, I'm very sensitive. I've developed a tough skin over the years, but when they tell you something, I'm like, what? I did that wrong? No. So yeah, I've had situations. Oh, there was a manager for Emory Worldwide that worked in the Nashville office. Oh my goodness. He put me in tears. One day I'm just like, ah! And I had to go back and gather myself and come back and say, okay, yeah, you're right. I should have said this and I should have done this and I should have done And actually it was about the customer. It wasn't about him because he was always about his customer, which I've been about the customer too, but some people are just a little bit more bullish than others. And he thought I should have gone more above and beyond for the customer. So yeah, it took me a long time to gather myself, but I did gather myself and I went back and I talked to him and I talked to the customer and we resolved it. So yes, I've had some tough
What about
situations.
The next generation coming up? Have you, is there any recommendations as far as, I don't know if you're mentoring anybody, but somebody is stepping in, what would be some of the basics that steps as far or phases that they need to get themselves up to and running proficient, with those nuggets of knowledge or the actions they should be taking over, the first 10 years of their career or something?
Okay. One of the things, even before we get into their career, one of the things that is more prominent now than it was back when we were going to school is you can actually get a degree in supply chain and logistics. And that's way more prominent now. So if you can start there, that's definitely a good place to start. The rest of us just kind of went in it out of the blue, right? So if you can start there, that would be awesome. Don't have to start there. You can definitely get into the industry even above and beyond that. So if for those people that are interested, again, it really goes back to networking, right? I am interested in either being an importer or, working with an exporter, or working with a freight forwarder, working with a broker. Find that organization or that one person that can be your mentor to work with. And I'll give you an example of one thing that happened. So a long time ago. Actually, I was a global training center class that I did. I think I was in Detroit when I did that class. I can't even remember way back where it was. And one of the attendees to this day, we are great friends. And he always says I'm his mentor. And I'm the reason why he now owns his own brokerage and freight forwarding company. And I'm like, what? Me? So sometimes you can affect people that you don't. And he said, yeah, you just had that passion for it. And he was, at the time, he was working for an exporter when he came to the class. And he's like, yeah, you had that passion. And it just kind of sparked something into me. And he went, studied for his brokerage exam, became a licensed broker. And now, like I said, he's owned his own firm for more than 5 years. A pretty decent size, still mom and pop, but still a pretty good size brokerage office and freight forwarding company. Right. So find avenues to be with the group of people that you want to. Same thing that you do with any other industry, right? Who do I like? What do I like? Who do I want to be with? Find that group of people, try to network with them, pick their brains. Like Andy's great. Lalo's great. If you want to go into IT, check with Lalo. Okay. Andy's great as far as networking and freight forward. So find those people and network with them. And they will also give you tips and tricks of go here, do this, and go here and do that. So it's a phenomenal industry.
So what do you think as far as the industry? I mean, obviously, the brokerage side, the regulations that come through for, continuing education credits for the brokers and all that, that's something. Do you see that as a good thing? And secondly, what do you see as far as any trends in particular as far as brokerage or compliance or import, export, transportation, supply chain? Anything in there that's worth noting?
Okay. So the getting continuing education is a phenomenal thing. It's one of the things that we've said, okay, truth be told, when we didn't have to do, we're like, hey, we're licensed custom broker. We don't have to do anything. But if you think about it, we are, I think, coming up till now, we're probably one of the only industries that never had to do continuing education that I'm aware of. If you're a realtor, you have to do continuing education. If you're a doctor, you have to do, so all these other industries, but we never had to do it. So I think it's a phenomenal thing that we now have to do it. And it also forces us to keep more abreast of what's going on because it's very easy, not as much anymore, but back in the day, it's very easy just to sit back on your laurels and say, I'm a licensed custom broker. I've been doing this for 25 years. You can't tell me anything. But now it forces us to keep more abreast of what's going on and up to date with things and, kind of keep us fresh and on our toes with the changes in the regulations. So I think it's a phenomenal thing. As far as trends in the industry, I really like the fact that everybody is, so to speak, on board of how do I stay abreast? How do I stay afresh of what's going on? And I also like the fact that there's so many mediums and more cool mediums like a podcast that you can stay up to date on what's going on. And there's several webinars and seminars. So it's a whole lot easier now to stay on top of stuff than it used to be. And another cool thing that I like, everything's online. You remember back in the day, you had to get your big 15 CFR and your big 19 CFR and it took up the whole table. Now everything is a finger and, like click, it's up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Where were you when I started? So I'm like, yeah, so those are old trends and new trends that I like and that I see what's going on. Mm-hmm.
Well, any particular recommendations as far as somebody that, let's say they're in the supply chain arena, they're not a customs broker, but they're more supply chain and in different aspects of that. How about any suggestions, discussions, or whatever they should have regarding how to incorporate, the compliance side of the house into their supply chain strategy meetings?
Okay. One of the big things, one of the many big things that I always say is it's all one. You can't have supply chain over here and trade compliance over here and IT over here and engineering over here. Everybody touches and affects the supply chain, right? So one of the main things is trade compliance needs to be at the beginning of the process. Whether it's an inbound process or an outbound process, trade compliance has to be at the beginning of the process and work in tandem with supply chain and logistics and sales and procurement, and everybody has to work together. So that's the simplest, easiest way that I put it. You have to be at the beginning and have a say, not just there in person. You have to be able to say, look, guys, if we do this way, here's what's going to happen versus if we do it this way, here's what we need to think about.
Well, networking if you're in a large company, one of the things I always suggest taking that a step further is, if you're in the compliance arena, most people are in that, and they have this silo that whether it's intentional or not, they're a stepchild or whatever it is. And it's like, you know what, you're gonna have to break out of that or make an effort. So, from a compliance, get out and meet the folks on the purchasing, sourcing side, the IT side, of course, your regulatory affairs type, legal, your transportation and warehousing and supply chain and all that kind of stuff, and even customer service, your accounting, both accounts receivable and accounts payable, because if you're dealing with international transactions, you cannot necessarily legally bill a customer until it has cleared customs or certain things have been satisfied on the way, or are there exceptions in that customers aren't paying? Has nothing to do with you, so you think. But in the midst of that, if they're hanging things up, I'm sure the accounting folks are trying to figure out things, or customer service trying to figure out things. There may be some exceptions. So, look for your exceptions and then get with those departments and network with people so that in the midst of a crisis, you're not meeting somebody for the first time. Would you agree with that kind of approach?
That's so true. Absolutely. Here's one group that a lot of people even forget about. What about the cleaning crew?
About the
security.
What?
The cleaning crew.
The cleaning. Oh, yes.
Security. Yes. Okay.
Right, elaborate on it a little bit. I know where you're going with that, but elaborate on that a little bit so that people are like, okay, gee,
The cleaning crew? What do they have to do with this? Okay. So one of the things we like to say is to add to that is that everybody touches and affects the supply chain from C-suite to C-suite, right? And the C-suite that I'm talking about is the cleaning crew. How does a cleaning crew touch and affect the supply chain? Well, what if you're CTPAT certified, or even if you're not CTPAT certified, you never know. Securing the supply chain is a valuable part of that process, or a key part of that process is a better way to say that. And you could have something simple as somebody goes out to take a smoke break, props the door open, wanders off, and anything can happen within that time frame, right? So it seems simple. It seems kind of, wait, what, really? Yeah, but anything can potentially happen. So you have to ensure that everybody from the top of the corporation to everybody else down through the organization understands their role like you said, whether I'm in purchasing, whether they're in engineering, whether they're in IT, understand their role and how that touches and affects the supply chain, and make sure that they're fully aware that what actions they do definitely can be an issue with the importing and exporting of that item. Last nuggets of knowledge. Trade compliance international trade is a phenomenal sector to be in. It's a phenomenal place to be. And the opportunities are limitless. So, and usually for those of us that are in it, you either really love it or you hate it. And if you hate it, get out because it can end up being really, really stressful. But for those of us that are in there, we are tied. It's just part of us. We bleed international trade. We bleed trade compliance, and it's just, a part of us. So if you decide to come join us, or you're deciding whether you want to stay or not, I think you should stay. It's great.
Well, you are definitely one of the more popular instructors at Global Training Center. So what are some of the courses that you are teaching?
Okay, so I teach the importing class, the exporting class. I teach the Canada class, Mexico, Incoterms, import audit, which is importing 201. What else do I teach? Is that it?
But you you're an author for 2 books that we carry. So they're industry books, importing into Mexico or exporting to Mexico, and exporting to Canada is the other one. But also a while back, Trudy and I kind of challenged her on this task a few years ago. And again, I come back from a background where I learn a lot from like books and through courses. But there used to be this real popular series of books that I used to read, called Teach Yourself X in 21 Days. Teach Yourself. It was normally Java or Teach Yourself Python, and things, little techie things that I was learning. And I told Trudy, "Hey Trudy, let's do a Teach Yourself, or not Teach Yourself. I think it was Learn Trade Compliance in 21 Days." Right? I think that's what we did. So then we evolved it. She took the challenge on, and lo and behold, that's a very popular course that we have right now, where it's not called Learn Trade Compliance in 21 Days. It's called Building Blocks of Trade Compliance. It's pretty much the same concept. And it's really cool because we split it up into 4 weeks. We have a bunch of videos that Trudy talks about. And then we have discussion forum where everybody just pitches in on what they felt they might have missed or need to learn more from the videos. And then we have a live session. So we just finished that today. It was our last day for this cohort. We have several during the year, but I feel like that one is a really good course, Trudy, that you really hit it out of the ballpark, that you did, and then you took my goofy ideas and challenges and we put it together. I remember we worked for like a whole week here in the office. Like we're just like crunching out. We pretty much wrote it. Yeah, exactly. Let's do the slides. Let's do the videos. And oh my goodness, it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. But it's a good course. I feel it's very, very strong course.
Well,
yeah. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. So it's been
definitely
cool.
And so we're going to have, I guess, the links here in the show notes. Or if you're interested in that, Lila, what would be the website, though, that people could go to and start looking at some of the courses that Trudy has and maybe some of the others that y'all are offering?
Right. So you can find any courses that we teach on globaltrainingcenter.com. And then when you go beyond, so specifically today, because part of the building blocks, you're learning a little bit on how to build a trade compliance manual. And somebody said, Trudy, can you give us what did she say? Can you give us a template so that we can start building? But I'm going to call you so you can finish it off for me or something, right? Or like audit it or something.
Yeah.
So that's what Trudy does. I mean, she'll teach you USMCA or tariff classification when you don't want to do it because you realize it's like, okay, I love that I know how to do this, but let me just delegate it to someone else. Trudy can come and do it. But so Trudy, you can find hers on truetradesolutions.com, and it's true as in TRU, like true. So truetradesolutions.com. Right,
yes.
Trudy?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I like the way you combine your first and last name too, because you say it's True Will. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's been fun to work with.
Well, I guess with that, we're going to wrap up. And folks, I guess please like us, share us, we have been trending up. It has been phenomenal already in 2024. we have had some big time guests on our shows, and oh my gosh, you guys have been great. We thank you for your listenership, but continue to do that. We are approaching new milestones, and if you're interested in advertising with us, you can reach out to the SimplyTrade podcast show, and we will definitely, or the Global Training Center. And we will definitely entertain that, because we've got some folks, we got some new things that are coming down the pipe that are really, really cool. So with that, Trudy, thank you so much for being on our show. And Lalo, I guess it's time to sign off, and have a good day.
Andy, Lalo, thank you guys so much. It's always fun hanging out with you guys. And thanks for thinking of me.
Thank you. No, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for joining us. SimplyTrade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show, or would like to sponsor SimplyTrade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at SimplyTradePod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. SimplyTrade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by SimplyTrade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.